The US journalist Evan Gershkovich is back in court for espionage in Russia in a proceeding which is classified as a state secret. That means no reporters, no friends, no family members or US embassy staff are allowed into that courtroom, where Gershkovich faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted. The Wall Street Journal reporter was arrested in March of last year. The accusation that he collected secret evidence about a Russian tank manufacturer on the orders of the CIA. Well, earlier we spoke to our former Moscow correspondent, Holdsworth.
Evan was born in the US, but born to Russian parents, Russian-born parents. His parents, both Jewish, had left Russia in the 1970s due to anti-Semitism there. So Evan was raised bilingual. He's a fluent Russian speaker. He arrived in Moscow in 2017, where typically for many young journalists seeking to make their career there, he worked for the English language Moscow Times, and he worked there for quite a while. He broke a lot of stories on shoestring budgets, and then he briefly worked for Agence France Presse, covering fires in Siberia, opposition protests, and Russia's response to the pandemic, before landing this choice job as the Moscow correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, which was his dream job. He's a very friendly, garrulous character. We've seen him briefly in some of those pre-trial appearances in Moscow courts, always smiling and joking. He's been held in Moscow's Lefortovo jail, which is an old 19th century prison, known as a pretty grim place to stay, but he's kept his spirits up. Colleagues and friends have been writing to him. I wrote to him myself at one point and eventually did get a reply from him. And he's spending his time reading, meditating, exercising. He's keeping his health up by having friends send fruit in to supplement the rather grim prison diet. So, I mean, he's somebody who's very confident and hopeful, and he knows that probably eventually he will be swapped for somebody held by the US. Russian President Vladimir Putin has hinted that Gershkovich could be freed if a Russian who was jailed in Germany for gunning down a Chechen separatist leader in a Berlin park, if he is freed and swapped for Gershkovich, Evan could find himself back home. But that's a way off yet, and it remains to be seen what happens in this trial and whether he is actually found guilty by the Russian authorities and sentenced to 20 years in prison, up to 20 years in prison.